The members could introduce themselves, starting with Representative Armanini.
Good morning. Mike Armanini, 75th District, Elk and Clearfield Counties.
Good morning, Representative Jamie Barton, 124th Legislative District, Schuylkill and Berks County, home of anthracite coal.
Good morning, Mike Cabell, 117th District, parts of Luzerne County.
Charity Grimm-Krupa, State Representative for the 51st District, which is Southern Fayette.
Representative Eric Nelson, Westmoreland County.
From the 50th District, parts of Washington and Greene County, where we invite you to come home, go big, and have a ball, State Rep Bud Cook.
Josh Kale Beaver, Washington County.
Abby Major, Armstrong, and Westmoreland counties.
Torren Ecker, parts of Adams and Cumberland County.
David Rowe, Union, Snyder, Juniata, and Mifflin counties.
Natalie Mahalik, Washington and Allegheny counties.
Dallas Kephart, Clearfield and Cambria County, 73rd District.
Brian Smith, Jefferson and Indiana County, District 66.
Tim O'Neill, 48th Legislative District, Washington County, and I think I might be the only certified underground coal miner in the legislature.
All right, and do we have any members? Representative Twardzik, I believe. And Representative Shern are online. For those online, you can still ask a question. Even though we are 1,100 feet underground right now in a coal mine, you can ask a question. Just please let the crew here know that you'd like to ask a question, and we could go from there. So before I hand it over to Representative Cook, whose district we are under, or in, I'm not sure what the proper terminology would be, I would like to say thank you to the Coal Alliance, to Rachel for helping organize this, and especially say thank you to Consol and Matt. You guys really appreciate the effort that you all put into this. This is awesome. Getting us down here, I think, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it because I'm pretty sure it's true, I think this is the first ever underground hearing in Pennsylvania, and who knows how many there have been across the nation. So getting this many legislators here underground to see what you guys are doing, to better understand your industry, it's exciting stuff. So we very much appreciate the effort that you all have put into having this hearing. So thank you very much. All right, handing it over now to Representative Cook, whose district we are in.
What an amazing opportunity for an individual whose one grandfather was mining administration, the other grandfather was a laborer, and whose dad started his career in the coal mining industry. I'm so excited. Coal for years has gotten a bad rap, and this is the opportunity to kind of share with everybody, number one, how important it is right now, the past history, and most important, the future going forward, the role that coal is going to play. So we want to thank you all for hosting this, for Consol, and having us in the mine. We really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Cook. And you mentioned that your grandparents worked in coal mines. Well, my grandparents worked in mills. And what a lot of people don't quite appreciate is that we never would have had the industry that we have in Western Pennsylvania without the coal, or in Northeastern Pennsylvania without the coal, because it is such an essential element, whether it's for fuel or other aspects of steel making. So I'm looking forward to learning more about what we're doing today with coal, how we can expand this industry and get the most out of the natural resources that we have here in Pennsylvania. Excited to have 4 testifiers today. We have Rachel Gleason, the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance, Matt McCowiak, the Manager of Government Affairs at Consol, Jim Barker, President of Rosebud Mining, and Tom Crooks, the Vice President of R.G. Johnson and Company. To the presenters, we ask that you keep it 3 to 5 minutes. I have never gavelled anybody out, just so you know, we're not going to keep it to that real tight, but we'd appreciate if you kept it in that time frame, because really we want to have a robust Q&A as well. So without further ado, looks like Ms. Gleason, the floor is yours.
You might have to gavel me out. Chairman Kale and members of the House Republican Policy Committee, my name is Rachel Gleason. I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance. And y'all have my written testimony with you, but before I start With that, I would like to welcome you to Consol Energy's Harvey Mine. We are currently, as Representative Kale, Chairman Kale mentioned, about 1,100 feet underground in the mine. This is an active coal mine. This mine produced over 6.2 million tons of high-quality bituminous coal in 2023, and in the past has been the recipient of the Coal Alliance's Longwall Mine Safety Award. I would like to recognize and thank Todd Moore, the Vice President of Safety here at Consol, his safety team here at the Harvey Mine, and the folks that literally built us this room so we could have this hearing. With that said, as Chairman Kale said, to my knowledge, I don't know about nationally, but I think this is probably the first public hearing that's been held underground, 1,100 feet underground in a coal mine. As many of you know, the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance represents underground and surface bituminous coal operators in Pennsylvania, as well as other associated companies whose businesses rely on coal mining and a strong coal economy. Our membership is comprised of over 150 companies that operate in 22 of Pennsylvania's counties. And on the ride in today, a lot of you saw the different support systems and what is just taken to invest into a coal mine. That's not just Consol Energy. Those are all ancillary manufacturer and business provider companies that support the industry. As Chairman Kale mentioned, Pennsylvania has a rich coal history that dates back to the mid-18th century when it fueled the Industrial Revolution, later supported the iron industry, and then Andrew Carnegie steel mills in the 1800s. Today, Pennsylvania coal remains a crucial resource, and nationally we are the third largest coal-producing state behind Wyoming and West Virginia, producing over 42 million tons of coal in 2023. Pennsylvania is also very unique in that we are the only state in the nation with valuable deposits of both high-quality thermal and metallurgical bituminous coal on the western side of the state and anthracite coal in the northeast. PCA operator member companies produced 98% of the bituminous coal mined in our Commonwealth last year, which totaled nearly 40 million tons. And with me today on this panel are representatives from the longwall side of things, the more thermal operations, and the room and pillar side of things, which are traditionally more metallurgical coal in Pennsylvania, and a service provider company that built the portal that we came down in today. And you will see in your testimony there's a map of the Pennsylvania coal deposits, which kind of shows you the different bituminous seams and the anthracite seams. I would like to first talk about coal's use. Our bituminous thermal coal provides baseload power that is unmatched by any other fuel source in affordability, flexibility, reliability, resiliency, and security. Coal power meets the needs of the grid when demand is high, and coal as a fuel source is readily available because it is stockpiled on site, especially during an emergency. We saw this, as you all may recall, 2 Decembers ago during Winter Storm Elliott, when coal-fired electric generation bailed out PJM's grid and provided 47% of the additional electricity when other sources became unavailable. Nationally, during Winter Storm Elliott, the coal fleet provided 39% of the additional electricity in the 14-state Southwest Power Pool region and 37% in MISO. These experiences underscore the importance of maintaining a diverse fleet of baseload generation that isn't too reliant on one source, especially during a time that government policies are pushing electrification and data centers and AI load growth are threatening grid reliability. Domestically last year, over 25 million tons of Pennsylvania coal produced was distributed for power production. Equally important is the ability for the United States to produce new steel. It is critical to our national security and national defense. At present, the only economical way to make new steel is with high-quality metallurgical coal, or coking coal, a scarce resource that is mined across western Pennsylvania. In 2023, over 2.8 million tons of Pennsylvania-mined metallurgical coal went to Pennsylvania steel production. In addition to producing electricity and steel, coal and coal-derived compounds are necessary for producing many essential products we use every day, such as cement, components of water filtration, and fertilizers. Industries across the Commonwealth and the U.S. directly rely on coal to manufacture products and build infrastructure that drives our economy. And for the reason we're all here today, with that as a background, last month the Allegheny Conference on Community Development finalized an independent report on the economic impact of the coal mining industry in Pennsylvania. The conference employed the in-plan model in developing the impact estimates of the coal mining industry on the Pennsylvania economy, using 2022 as the most recent baseline year available in the model and 2023 employment production numbers from the Mine Safety Health Administration. And that report is all in front of you. The report revealed that Pennsylvania's coal industry remains a dominant force, creating economic value in communities across Pennsylvania with major capital investments like the utilization of advanced mining machinery that costs millions of dollars to purchase, operate, and maintain, while also investing in a multitude of other goods and services. Statewide, Pennsylvania's coal mining industry is responsible for sustaining over 11,500 full-time jobs, of which 5,000 are directly related to coal mining. These jobs produce $955 million in labor income, which nearly 49% is paid directly into the coal mining industry. Underscoring that again for all of you, the coal industry contributes close to $1 billion in labor income in the state. The industry employs thousands of people that live and work in our state, have children that attend our schools, are valuable members of many of your communities. Industry employees have family-sustaining jobs. The average salary of an underground coal miner in Pennsylvania in 2023 was $111,000. Pennsylvania's coal industry also produces approximately $3.8 billion in economic output, with $2.2 billion of that directly generated by the industry. And while the bulk of the report focused on statewide production, the conference also looked at specific industry subsets: transportation by barge, rail, and truck, and two specific areas of Pennsylvania with concentrated sources of mining activity: Greene and Washington County, and the Allegheny Mountain region, defined as Armstrong, Cambria, Clearfield, Indiana, Jefferson, Somerset, and Westmoreland counties. On the transportation side of things, the extraction, processing, transportation, and use of coal creates economic activity that contributes to the state's economic growth. Once coal is mined, it is sent to a prep plant that washes waste from the coal, often rock. In some instances, the prep plant is on site and the coal is transported via conveyor belt. But in other scenarios, the coal is trucked to the plants for cleaning. Once clean, the coal is transported via truck for delivery, via truck to barges in Pennsylvania for delivery, loaded on rail for domestic delivery, and loaded on rail for exports. The report attributes over $865 million of economic output in our state to the transportation of coal via barge, truck, and rail, with over 4,500 full and part-time jobs. In Greene and Washington County, 7 longwall mines operate. We are in one now, the Harvey Mine. Longwall mining is considered full extraction mining that nets high production. In 2023, these mines produced over 29 million tons of coal from the Pittsburgh No. 8 coal seam, and the production tonnage is expected to increase in the next few years as one of the longwalls leaves West Virginia and operates entirely in Pennsylvania. As a major contributor to the economy locally and regionally, the report found operations in Greene and Washington counties were responsible for over 4,000 jobs, of which 2,300 were direct, and created over $1.7 billion in economic output. In the Allegheny Mountain region, the report's focus was limited to production by underground room and pillar operations, which exclusively produce metallurgical coal or coking coal for the steel industry. Room and pillar is exactly as it sounds. Large pillars of coal are left behind in the mining process, resulting in less extraction than longwall mining. According to the report done by the conference, the counties in the Allegheny Mountain region were responsible for 2,000 full and part-time jobs, of which over 1,000 were direct, and created over $386 million in economic output. As I mentioned earlier, in 2023, over 2.8 million tons of Pennsylvania mined metallurgical coal went to Pennsylvania steel production, and 6.4 million tons of Pennsylvania mined metallurgical coal was exported. In closing, and thank you for not gaveling me out, I have personally represented the Pennsylvania's bituminous coal industry for a decade, and I have witnessed the impact of misguided policy efforts on both the federal and state level, from the Clean Power Plan to the nuclear bailout, to RGGI, to now Clean Power Plan 2.0, and co-government regulations, and the current governor's press and PACER proposals. All of these policies discriminate directly against fossil fuel use or generation and have negatively impacted industry by creating uncertainty. Moreover, state and federal regulations, proposed legislation, and far too often those that sustain litigation threaten significant investments in communities and families. The work done by the conference in developing this economic impact report is important to assure elected officials such as yourselves and the public that Pennsylvania's coal industry remains viable, employs thousands of hardworking men and women with considerable wages that drives economic growth to many sectors that support the industry. I would like to encourage the members of the committee and your colleagues to continue pro-industry efforts and remain mindful that positive policy actions and regulatory reforms can drive economic growth, as does predictability. And thank you again to the committee for the opportunity to testify and for traveling to Greene County and joining us 1,100 feet underground. And I will welcome any questions when our panel is finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kowiak.
Chairman Kale and members of the Policy Committee, I want to thank you for the opportunity to appear in front of you today, 1,100 feet underground in Western Pennsylvania. My name is Matt McKowiak, Manager of Government Affairs for Consol Energy. I handle external affairs and legislative and regulatory issues both at the federal level and at the state level in each state within Consol's operational footprint. Consol Energy is a thermal and metallurgical coal producing company based in Washington County, and we welcome you to our Harvey mine today. We and our predecessors have been mining bituminous coal in southwestern Pennsylvania for over 150 years, providing our nation, as well as foreign customers, with an affordable, reliable source of electricity and the raw material necessary to produce steel. From our mines in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, Consol coal travels by rail not only to our domestic customers, but also to the Consol Marine Terminal in the Port of Baltimore, the second largest export terminal on the eastern seaboard and the only one serviced by 2 national railroads. About 2/3 of our coal goes to export markets overseas every year, and that amount is steadily increasing, where we supply it to countries across 5 continents. Our exports are used primarily for industrial use, used in developing the infrastructure for entire cities worldwide. From the end of the Civil War through an industrial revolution, 2 world wars, and a Great Depression, coal has been the dependable building block of our society that has allowed the United States to emerge as the world's strongest and most powerful nation. Coal's economic impact can be seen not only through its history and legacy to Pennsylvania, but also in its continued use in power generation and infrastructure development, which, despite widespread misguided belief, isn't going away anytime soon. Global demand for coal hit record highs in 2023 at over 8 billion metric tons, and demand is only set to further rise this year and into the next several years. In 2023, Consol's total revenues and other income was $2.6 billion. We mined 26 million tons of coal from our Pennsylvania mining complex, paid $20 million in taxes to the state of Pennsylvania, paid out $185 million in salaries and benefits to Pennsylvania employees, and currently employ over 2,000 people. We also made over $350 million in gross payments for purchased goods and services to Pennsylvania-based suppliers. Consol is an important fixture in the local economy. In Greene County, we're the #1 largest private industry employer. In Washington County, we're number 13. Entire counties and groups of people depend on the jobs and economic stimulation that coal mining brings with it. But aside from our traditional role as a thermal and metallurgical coal producer, Consol Energy is also leading the way to the future of coal, particularly through our subsidiary entity, Consol Innovations. Our mission is to expand our business into new frontiers that provide even more diverse applications of coal. Consol Innovations is already supplying coal to customers within the construction materials, battery components, and aerospace and defense industries, just to name a few. The jobs and economic potential of coal's alternative uses, in addition to power generation and steel production, will ensure a robust industry and opportunities for Pennsylvania's workforce well into the future. To highlight the point that coal's versatile capabilities will still be relied upon as critical components to our society, Consol Energy funded and launched a public awareness campaign just last year titled Not So Fast. Our campaign website, thecoalhardtruth.com, is a thorough, well-researched site that we hope can be used as a resource for anyone who wants to learn the truth about coal's contributions to our daily lives that a lot of us frankly take for granted. The reality of America's most valuable resource is that coal is not going anywhere anytime soon. Coal is building economies and lifting nations out of poverty as we speak, and CONSOL is fueling that progress. The men and women working here in our mines in Pennsylvania are fueling that progress. And as these nations and others embrace the benefits of coal, Pennsylvania, with our vast coal reserves, only stands to gain even more from the industry that CONSOL Energy is proud to be a part of. Again, thank you for the opportunity to appear in front of you today, and I look forward to any questions you might have for me.
Mr. Barker.
Okay. Jim Barger from Rosebud Mining Company. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today. There should be a PowerPoint that's in your packets that you'll be able to take a look at. We'll have some maps and things on it. So Rosebud was founded by Cliff Forrest in 1979. He's our present owner and CEO. So we have about 900 employees in Pennsylvania, about 60 over in Ohio. We have 15 underground coal mines located in Indiana, Cambria, Jefferson, Clearfield, Somerset, Elk, and Armstrong counties. So we mine about 4.5 million tons of metallurgical coal in Pennsylvania, about 500,000 tons of thermal coal over in Ohio. And when we talk about metallurgical coal, most people do not understand the difference between steam and metallurgical coal. To explain that, we first have to talk a little bit about the steel industry. So on slide 2 in the packages, we go over that steel is an alloy of iron and carbon. All right, so an alloy is a combination of metals and other elements that often has properties quite different than what comes together to make it. So if anybody's familiar with cast iron, it's very heavy, it's very brittle and breaks. And long ago, they figured out how to make steel out of it. It contains less than 2% carbon and 1% manganese and small amounts of some other elements. So steel is made in 2 ways. So originally it can be made from iron ore. Mostly it's mined in Minnesota in the United States. That way is called primary integrated or blast furnace route. It's what you think of with U.S. Steel in Pittsburgh. All right. So the second way that steel is made is it can be recycled from previously made steel. All right. So think of the plant in Butler, Pennsylvania, that is now owned by Cleveland Cliffs, used to be AK. All right. So that is an EAF, electric arc furnace. It recycles scrap. So you collect the scrap, sort it, process it, and you can take and melt it and recycle it. So slide 3 just highlights what iron ore looks like that comes out of the ground. It kind of have an orange or a rust color to it. All right. So on slide 4, we try and explain that. So what does steel have to do with coal? And iron ore in the ground is oxidized. It's Fe2O3. Fe is the iron, O is the oxygen, right? So what the steel maker needs to do is deoxidize or reduce the iron ore, shed the O3 and keep the Fe2. Right? That's the whole point of it. So originally, if you were to watch a movie in medieval times, you had the blacksmith who's pounding on a sword and he sticks it into the fire and everything. And wood was used and turned into charcoal, and that's how they started with applying carbon to iron in order to get pig iron. So today, coke is what they use at a modern facility, like what U.S. Steel has in Pittsburgh. It's made of metallurgical coal. So met coal and coking coal are synonymous and mean the same thing. So on slide 5, in a nutshell, woody cellulosic prehistoric plant life under the right heat and pressure is what can turn into metallurgical coal that is turned into coke in order to make steel from it. All right. So it is basically baked in an oxygen-free coke oven, turned into coke. Coke is used to reduce the iron ore into what the industry calls pig iron, and then pig iron is turned into steel in a basic oxygen furnace. We got a couple pictures of what that looks like. So on slide 6, we have a map of the United States. The dark shaded areas are the coal-bearing areas in it, and the little green areas are where there is coking coal. It's basically on the front edge of the Appalachian Mountain chain. All right? There is not a lot of it in the United States, and we are blessed to have it in the counties that I rattled off where we have operations. So a coke oven, on slide 7, just a picture of a coke oven. It carbonizes or bakes, to say it simplistically, cokes the met coal into coke. And again, it's just like making charcoal out of wood. It's a condensed carbon source that is important for heat and chemical reactions that go on in that blast furnace to turn into pig iron. So slide 8 shows pig iron being dumped into a blast furnace, shows a caster creating slabs, and those slabs ultimately can get rolled into hot rolled coil like you see going down on the highway, beams, pipe, rails, you name it. So steel is important on slide 9 and 10. All right, so if you think about it, everything in the world has some level of steel in it, operating rooms, the farm machinery, for the agriculture, for bridges that you drove over, getting here today, skyscrapers, automobiles. And on slide 10, we try and highlight the military importance of having steel and the ability to make it in the United States. So on slide 11, all right, China is presently making 54% of the world's steel. All right, that should set you back in your seat just a little bit. Asia, in that area of the world, that geography, is 67%. So 2/3 of the world's steel is presently produced. Far different than, let's say, back in the World War II era where America was the main steel maker. So North America, us, Canada, and Mexico, make about 7% of the world's steel, and our friends in Europe, the entire European Union, is about 11%. So North America and the European Union is really only about 18% of the world's production of steel. So switching back to pig iron on slide 12, and this is perhaps the most poignant matter for me to try and explain and make sure you understand. So we talked about how you got to take iron ore and reduce it in order to make pig iron, in order to make new steel out of it. And the entire Western Hemisphere is presently only producing about 4.4% of the pig iron in the world. All right, so that's Northern America and South America. North America is only producing about 2.2% of the world's pig iron, so China presently is 2/3 of the world's pig iron. All right. So why do you say, why is that important? So on slide 13, what I try and explain is in the U.S. steel industry, 72% of it is produced by EAFs, like in Butler, and that is wonderful and very clean and very efficient. All right, so that means that about 28% of it is produced from the iron ore that gets mined out in Minnesota and converted into new steel. All right, again, a very efficient, clean, and good operating system. However, in times of conflict, if you end up sending steel across the ocean in some manner, either in support of allies or because we're in a direct conflict by ourselves, that is a problem because you can't recycle that steel once you send it off your shore. And whenever you're doing 72% recycling, it can be a bit of a difficult issue. All right, and we just need to think about that. And the reason I highlight that is on slide 14, there's a picture of Clairton here. And Clairton is the Western Hemisphere. It's the largest coke batteries in all of the Western Hemisphere. In our view, it is just necessary to keep the remaining coke batteries and blast furnaces, iron ore mines, and met coal mines relevant and understood of their importance for economic and national security. We just need to take and do things to maintain them. The EPA has a national emission standards for hazardous air pollutants for coke manufacturing facilities that's out. That is difficult. There's ever more stringent regulation on them, and I understand society is demanding cleaner and cleaner operations. At the same time, society has to have, for economic and national security, the ability to convert iron ore in the ground in Minnesota into something you can use to support your economy during wartime or the actual troops for wartime. So steam coal, which Consol does an exceptionally good job of mining, is critical for economic and energy security, for having reliable and affordable electricity. We need that to mine our met coal. Met coal is critical for economic and national security, converting iron ore into new steel. We have mined metallurgical coal in Indiana County since 2004 and shipped it the whole way to Japan to Nippon Steel, who are actively working on buying U.S. steel right now. We've had a 20-year relationship with them. We would not be mining it in Indiana County, processing it in a plant, putting it on a rail car, taking it to Consol's terminal in Baltimore, and shipping it over to Japan if it was not a critical mineral, a critical resource in the world. There's high value to it, and people understand it. Nippon understands it. And those in the steel industry understand it. I hope that some way we helped explain a little bit of it here. So welcome any questions whenever it comes to that time.
Thank you. Mr. Crooks.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming here. We're so glad you're here. We appreciate your service to our Commonwealth and to our community. You have a thankless job. Representing your constituents, that's really hard. I can't imagine how difficult your challenges must be every day, listening to so many voices and concerns, then trying to figure out how to be helpful in every decision you make, while knowing that the right decision is rarely the easy decision. Being an elected representative may be one of the hardest jobs there is. It's okay to nod. Speaking of hard jobs, thanks for coming to this amazing place. where men and women work every day to mine the coal that powers Pennsylvania, America, and the world. Being a miner may also be one of the hardest jobs there is. It's wonderful that you're walking some steps in their shoes. We welcome you to our world. Isn't it great? So, background about me. I'm Tom Crooks. No relation to that Tom Crooks. I'm a mining engineer. I've been fortunate to have worked in and around mining since 1982. I've worked with R.G. Johnson since 1986. I've been blessed to visit dozens of mines in Pennsylvania and in Appalachia throughout my career. My favorite days are those spent underground. So what? I'm a coal person. I'm an old coal person. You met lots of those today, didn't you? Well, I'm not just a miner. I'm one of the thousands of people who are part of the indirect and induced impact of Pennsylvania coal mining. And I love the coal industry and what it does to make our communities and people better. So R.G. Johnson, I'm a vice president at R.G. Johnson, and technically it's R.G. Johnson Company, Inc. We sink mine shafts and we do other contracting work in and around mines. You came in the mine today in a shaft that we constructed. You were on an elevator that we helped to install. The fresh air you're breathing right now is coming down our air shaft. Consol says it's their shaft, but to our guys, my R.G. Johnson guys, that's our shaft. I talked to the guy today, off topic just for a second. I talked to one of my supers that sank the shaft this morning before I came. He's still proud of this place. We have roots back to 1917. That's 1917. Over 107 years if you're not a mining engineer like me and need me to do the math. The roots are right here in southwestern Pennsylvania, and we're proud to have provided a really great life to hundreds, maybe thousands of people over those years. Today we have a team of 137 people working to serve the mining industry as an indirect contributor to the economic impact of Pennsylvania coal mining. We have some of the most lucrative pay and benefits in any industry. Inexperienced people come right to us and they start at over $20 an hour. Experienced laborers make $30 an hour. Technicians, somebody with a certification, $33 to $35 an hour. Fully paid health care, like none I've ever heard of anywhere else. Hourly people get 3 weeks paid vacation, up to 9 holidays. Here's the best part, they work a 3-on, 3-off schedule. We tried to change that last week. There was a total uproar and we backpedaled on it. We wanted to give them a 3-3-2 or 3-2-3. They didn't like that. So 3-on-3 schedule. It gives them work-life balance. We have a pension plan that's like no other I've ever been around. And that's just for our hourly people. Supervisors get that and more. The supervisors make $80,000 to $100,000 a year in wages. But what we're really proud of is that at least 90% of those people that work for us have a high school diploma as their highest education level. 2024 will be around $10 million in wages. I mean, that's no console, but we're pretty proud of that. And there's more in 2023. We spent about $12 million with other vendors, over 300 of them. And we expect that number to be about 15 million in 2024. So not bad for a little old shaft company with a long history of serving our industry and our community. For me, the coal industry has provided a way for us to employ great people. My colleagues and I have focused on keeping as many people working for as long as we possibly can. Our company strives to provide long, healthy, and happy careers for each and every one of our team members. The economic impact experts, they tell us that we're part of something big. I don't need a study to tell me that R.G. Johnson is part of the big. I see it every day in the faces of my team. Our R.G. Johnson team is just proud to be part of Pennsylvania Coal. So we're in the community too. We're active in lots of ways. We support many local causes as a company. Sometimes that's in the form of a financial support. Other times it's by donating our skilled labor for community projects. We work in lots of places, and if there's a fire company nearby, that's one of the things that we like to support. We are good neighbors. We also encourage our employees to support causes individually. We match employee donations to their causes of up to $250 per year. We help with the youth too. We support Greene County Career and Technical Center by employing 2 students from that VOTEC all the time in our operations support facility. We teach the students how to work our way, and we support the school financially as well. So in conclusion, thanks to Consol and their team for hosting us today, and thank you to all of you that came today and had a chance to be in our world. It's truly an honor sharing how the Pennsylvania coal industry impacts R.G. Johnson and me every day. I'll close by saying I invite you to come to one of our job sites or to come to our operations support facility right outside of Waynesburg off Interstate 79. We would love to show you around and to provide another opportunity for you to see Pennsylvania coal in action. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to questions. Representative Cook.
So the one thing that totally overwhelmed me and impressed me today, there were 2 main topics. Safety. Safety, safety, safety. And the second part of it is family. I was talking to Todd, our safety guy, 44 years in the industry, started at 18. And we continue to hear all these stories about the average age starting as 18. And anybody who's ever been involved or anything knows that it's a very tight family, both labor and administration. So I just wanted to open the door and let you all kind of say whatever you wanted to about the environment. It's such a neat industry.
So I'll jump on this one. So we had an opportunity to listen to Todd at the beginning and his staff. You should know that the coal industry sometimes treats safety as lip service. I can say it. I've been in it. I know. Consol is not treating it as lip service. They hold us all to the highest safety standards. They truly wish that their employees go home every day better than they were when they came. And us as R.G. Johnson, we live that well as well. We have to meet their high standards. And why not? Why wouldn't you do that? That's exactly what we should do. So I was mentioning to Todd that I think in terms of safety, we're perfect in our effort to be as safe as we can be every day. You just saw a little bit of it. There's a lot more behind the scenes that you didn't see. We're perfect in our effort every day, but it's a really hard job. And so sometimes we're not always perfect in our execution. But we believe that we are the most actively safe industry that there is. And we're really proud of that, and we try to get better at it every day. So yes, safety is really important to us. Thank you.
And Representative Cook, I'll add to that, outside of just Consol, I mean, obviously the Coal Alliance represents a number of different operators, quite a number of underground mining operations and some surface mining operations. But for your information, our operators are regulated by the federal government through the Mine Safety Health Administration, and we have duplicative oversight with the Pennsylvania DEP's Mine Safety Program. So we have state inspectors and federal inspectors that are in our mines every day, literally every day. So, you know, we take safety very importantly, but we also have a significant amount of oversight.
Yeah, thank you, Representative. I'll just add, our CEO, Jimmy Brock, always likes to say that safety is not a value, it's a way of life. That's how we operate, and we always put that first more than anything else. We want everybody to get home from work every day without any life-altering accidents or anything like that, just to make it home to their families, and we look out for each other. So I appreciate you taking note of that. Thank you.
I'll just make a comment on family. Appreciate you bringing that up. And, you know, we have a lot of fathers, sons, brothers, cousins working in a mine, and they work in the same community that they live in. We have guys that live 5 minutes from the mine, guys live an hour from the mine, but they're raising children and are part of the community and while mining is heavy industry, it involves trucks, cleaning plants, mine fans, and things. We just recognize that, and we live within the same communities we work in, and try and be good partners in it. But I certainly appreciate you bringing up about it.
Representative Barton.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, all the testifiers. This is great because when we think a lot of the perception of coal mining, we joked earlier that it's axes or picks and shovels and mules and trolleys. And I think there's also a lot of thought of coal used in a potbelly stove or even for heating a home. And while there is that still, we realize that Pennsylvania literally is the tip of the spear. The steel tip of the spear when we think about our military. And so it's important. And I just have a couple other comments before my question. And it's just very refreshing to come here. On my way here, I saw signs that said, "Please do not litter." And it was Consol Energy that put that out there. I saw signs that drive like your children live here, and they weren't from a neighbor. You guys put them out. You're definitely community oriented, family oriented, and your comments of safety ring out throughout the community here, just by somebody that's come from Schuylkill County. And my other comment is you mentioned, Matt, specifically, you mentioned widespread misguided belief. Now, we have heard that from the other side of the aisle regularly, this widespread misguided belief on what coal is. And it's very difficult. And I also want to compliment you on the not so fast, the coalhardtruth.com that you mentioned in your testimony, Matt, is a fabulous support for this industry, and I encourage everybody to take a look at that, just because it supports this industry so much. And one of the things that's hard for us, for me specifically, is if you walk into our Capitol, this beautiful Capitol, not quite as beautiful as this room, but that you created for us, but the beautiful Capitol, built in 1906, you walk up the steps, this beautiful rotunda is held up with four paintings, four pillars, if you will. And the first one that you see is religious freedom. And if you turn to the right, you'll see oil. And these are the things that our country was built on in 1906. If you turn around and look back, you'll see coal. And if you keep turning, you'll see steel. Religious freedom, oil, coal, and steel. The very things that the other side of the aisle are demonizing, in 1906, it's what built, the founders of our state, and I'll say our country, believed in that. So, and I want to, my question revolves around something Jim mentioned, but I'll share it, and it's specific to the heritage. 150 years, and Jim, you referenced generations, fathers, sons, I'm going to say grandfathers, and probably in some cases great-grandfathers and grandmothers that have worked in this industry. They live here, and this goes to stewardship of our environment. They live here, they drink the water, they breathe the air, I'm going to bet some of them fish and hunt. And so my question is, do you see the industry as being good stewards of the environment the way I'm seeing it, or am I painting a rosy picture here?
I would say today, yes. Yesteryear, 100 years ago, no. There were mining laws that were enacted in 1977 that dramatically altered what an operator needs to do. And they were an improvement for Pennsylvania and all of its citizens. Today, with the ability for people to video, photo everything, the average citizen has a relatively large soapbox to be able to speak from and project from. As a company, you have to take care of business and the people around you in your areas. Otherwise, you will pay a heavy price for it. And again, we have employees who live there and are neighbors with people, raising their children. Most of our guys do hunt and fish. They love the outdoors. They might be underground for 10 hours a day, but otherwise they want to be outdoors. They have children that are racing dirt bikes to playing the flute in school. And there's just a much, the evil old coal baron smoking a cigar is long past, is what I would say. And the image should be of, companies that are trying in society and doing a good service to society and either clean and reliable energy or cocaine-making materials for making steel. And that's the message we would like to get out, but it's a very difficult past to break away from.
And sir, if I could just add to that, as Jim mentioned, the coal industry was not regulated on the federal level until 1977 with the passage of SMACRA. Pennsylvania does have the largest inventory of AML issues, largely because, as I mentioned in my testimony, we supported the iron industry, we supported the steel industry, we supported 2 world wars before any of the industry was regulated. So post-1977, we, again, just like mine safety, we are regulated on the federal level via the Office of Surface Mining, and we are regulated on the state level via DEP, and DEP has stricter regulations than what we comply with on the federal level. So Pennsylvania in itself is very heavily regulated industry, and current operators not only comply with those regulations, but some of them are also very innovative in looking at projects in their backyards that perhaps DEP does not have the expertise to address, and they find solutions and have, I won't toot anybody's horn, but have earned national recognition for cleaning up, I will say, Ehrenfeld, St. Mike, some projects that cleaned up the Stony Creek River with the switch of a button in a day or two. So a lot of our operators are very innovative in working in their communities and recognizing AML and AMD issues and integrating them with their current operations.
I'd also like to add to, in addition to SMACRA, that helped certainly in the 70s to sort of change the perceptions and where coal companies went, the directions that we took as far as environmental protection and sustainability, stewardship. I'd also say that, we always continually invest in our sustainability record. We spent about $69 million last year on environmental sustainability efforts to try to bring our reclamation areas under control and bring the nature back to the way it should be. And then, we also have set very ambitious goals, net zero goals that are more ambitious than a lot of the national goals that are out there. We did that under our own accord. And I think that we've continuously striven to be great environmental stewards. We're working on methane mitigation projects as well as looking into carbon capture right now as well. So we're hopeful about all of that, and we have consistently maintained a 99.9% environmental compliance record, which we're also very proud of. So thank you for that question.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question really dovetails with what Representative Barton was getting into. Like Representative Kale, my grandfather retired from U.S. Steel. I've worked at a number of those mills, the Clairton that was mentioned in the testimony. Earlier during the safety brief, representatives from Consol had mentioned how their business has shifted in the last 5 to 7 years. So there was a lot more American consumed product, and you've almost been pushed out of the United States. I'd like to, if you could touch on that a little bit, and then, Ms. Gleason, you had mentioned the press and PACER and even these new, they're almost bureaucratically environmental weaponization that's really impacting the jobs in the industry. Can you first touch on how your business has been forced from the region, and then what do we see on this assault going forward?
Yeah, thank you, Representative. I think the writing has been on the wall for a little while now. We've made a very intentional shift towards export markets. As I mentioned, we continue to export more of our product every year. And you look at things like the closure of the Homer City power plant, Just the fact that the customer base and the industry, the market in the United States is drying up for coal, especially coal-powered generation. But it's expanding globally, and we want to fill those needs globally to help them engineer the cities and the power structure needs that they have over there in multiple countries across the world, especially in developing nations. But there's definitely a need abroad for our product, and we will continue to help supply that need with some of the most high quality coal in the world, I might add, as well, low sulfur, high BTU content. So we're proud to do that.
Representative Nelson, I think that might be an entirely other hearing. But I will say, on the regulatory just policy level, it's often death by 1,000 cuts. And we have seen, and I mentioned in my testimony, predictability. I mean, industry does need predictability, and we don't mind coal to let it sit on the ground. And Jim can probably talk about this more, but I know even with metallurgical coal, it has a certain composition. I think it's the fluidity that it needs to be used within a certain time frame, or it cannot be used in those coke ovens. But as far as PRESS, PACER, RGGI, Nuke Bailout, Clean Power Plan 2.0, I mean, the list goes on and on. I've said to my board it's exhausting. But I think one of the big divides is folks just don't understand how stuff works. And there's always a handout. And I will say the coal industry is probably one of the only industries that has not asked for a handout. We always advocate for competing on a fair and level marketplace. And when you are subsidizing unreliable generation so that it can compete at $0 and or negative dollars against thermal generation, that's a problem. We need base load, reliable generation. We saw that during Winter Storm Elliott. We saw how much coal bailed out the grid. Sadly, I think it might have to come to brownouts or blackouts for folks to realize that solar energy doesn't turn on your lights. But until we get to the point where we have massive battery storage that can support the grid of 65 million people, you're going to need reliable baseload. But it's not just the conversation around generation. It's also, unnecessary regulations that are very expensive to comply with that might not be necessary. We saw that a couple years ago with some water regulations, whereas DEP doesn't comply with what they wanted industry to comply with. But nevertheless, it's death by 1,000 cuts, and it's attempted at every single angle.
And Jim, in your testimony, you mentioned China, not my world's best friend, and their role in steel and energy. On average, they're building about a coal-powered facility a week over there. So how in the United States we're treating ourselves so much differently, where these countries that are really active enemies of ours are building and expanding their coal infrastructure and their steel producing infrastructure. How do you see that vulnerability moving forward?
Matt mentioned that, in the world there will be 8 billion tons of coal mined annually. And I would tell you that China is 4 billion of that. And when we think about the 40 million tons mined in Pennsylvania, and think that enacting RGGI is somehow going to change the climate whenever China's puking out 4 billion tons out of 8 billion. It's just hard to, I'm an accountant by trade, not a coal miner, and I have a hard time figuring that math out, just to be honest with you. The other thing is China has built a 1 billion ton a year steel industry, and they're about 90% blast furnace, less than 10% EAF. And that 1 billion ton a year steel industry has built the largest Navy fleet out there and is now projecting power in the Pacific. And I know that's well beyond the policy and politics of here in Pennsylvania, but as you know, policy does have a large influence on things, and you got to see the big picture before you can get down to the little picture and make it work. And sometimes those things just seem to get lost. And as the others up here said, just educating people on it. People who get the right, who hear all of the facts, not just one side of the facts, will usually make good decisions. I think, I would like to think that most Americans, given the correct set of full facts from both sides, will end up picking the right path on things. And I feel like the industry, both steel and energy production, is complex enough it is very difficult for people to ferret that out.
One more comment. When you bring up Reggie and Pacer and Press, I think it's also important to recognize that none of those proposals are about emission reductions. DEP's own modeling showed that there were no reasonable, I think it was like 0.08 reduction in CO2 with Reggie, 0.08%. What they were about was generating revenue to subsidize unreliable sources of energy. So they weren't about emission reductions. It was all about generating revenue for subsidies.
Paying more, getting less, right? I'd actually argue it raises emissions because it sends more demand to China. Representative Rowe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And kind of continuing on the international impacts of what we're talking about here today, you referenced in your testimony that the overseas demand continues to skyrocket for coal. Why is that? Is it because of the lack of capacity here in the United States as we continue to shutter plants as China builds them? Or is it because of competition with natural gas? Or is it just an increased demand in developing countries? Or is it some combination of all of that?
Yeah, it's primarily just increased demand due to industrial uses. So the biggest portion of our exports that go overseas are used for industrial use. That's everything from cement and concrete making to brick making, firing brick kilns to cure bricks. They use coal for that. You look at countries like India or Egypt. Egypt is trying to build an entirely new city of New Cairo. They're going to need the steel, the bricks, the concrete, everything that's possible to build a city literally from the ground up. And so that's where that demand is. It's also power generation as well. So there are still 775 million people about globally that don't have access to electricity. And as these countries industrialize, they need to bring the power grid to their people. India's a big example of that. There's places of Southeast Asia that are trying to do that as well. So it's industrial use primarily. That's where a lot of our exports go, but also still power generation in a lot of those developing nations too.
And if I could add 2 points to that, one of the really valuable things about where we are right now in the coal in Northern Appalachia is it has a very high BTU. So it's very much in demand because it burns really, really hot. In addition to that, when there's countries like Russia that's a jerk to the Ukraine and a natural gas pipeline gets cut off, or England is completely reliant on wind and it doesn't work, no exaggeration, during the pandemic, I would get probably about a phone call every 2 weeks asking for coal because they could not find it. And again, we don't mine it for it to sit on the ground. We largely operate on contracts. If there's something left over, we can give it to you. But it's all a very planned operation. You see this massive operation that's here today. That tonnage is planned. You mine it because it's ordered. So that's where the demand lies.
Who burns cleaner coal, us or China?
We definitely do. Generally, the higher the BTU level, we have pretty high BTU level. The cleaner it burns inherently, so it's going to burn cleaner than other types of coals, other dirtier coals, if you will. But yeah, we will burn it cleaner than anybody else.
I would just add to his comment that there are controls on our power plants, such as SCRs and scrubbers, that are addressing some of the pollution. And there in Southeast Asia and in China, there are plants with no controls on it whatsoever. So even outside of a cleaner, hotter burning coal, there's also the controls at the plant level that simply don't exist. And again, that gets back to 4 billion tons being mined over there just in one country and being burnt with subpar control features on their power plants versus what has been done in the United States. We have very, very clean, they can rattle off the numbers of, 80, in the upper 80% reductions in particulate matter and sulfur and everything else. And again, people have a hard time understanding it. When you look at a power plant and you see all the steam coming up out of it, a very small fraction of it is actually any level of pollution. The large majority of it is always just steam, H2O, that's it. And it is very easy to show a picture of that and cast it as all pollution, and it just simply isn't, and it's hard to express that to people.
I do think that's an important thing to realize because there's over 3,000 coal plants in China, right? And they're building more all the time, whereas we're down to just over 200 and we're closing more all the time. And yet we're the ones who burn it better than they do. So it's kind of that radical environmental lobby is actually working against what their objective should be because they are outsourcing what we could be doing better to countries that are empirically doing it worse. And I think that shines light, kind of what you said, Ms. Gleason, with Reggie and Pace and all these other things that they're coming up with. Reggie, I remember this study we've talked talked about before, they did a study on Pennsylvania's emissions and utility rates and all those other sorts of things. We were doing better on both counts. Our user rates were going down and our emissions were going down faster than all our northeastern Reggie state neighbors. So I think that's the important thing to realize here is that we do it better. Ms. Gleason, you also talked about grid reliability. There was a senator I was talking to who's just over in Europe, and there was a time during the day where they just turned off all the lights. And she thought, oh, this is a problem. And they said, no, it's just our planned blackout for the day, where there has to be certain times of the day where you just don't have power. Now, in Europe, they can start, they have adjacent countries they can purchase their energy from, and that's what they've been doing. But if we continue this rapid transition and outsourcing of our energy to overseas entities, is China going to bail out PJM next time we have a winter storm? I mean, what happens to the U.S. when we outsource this baseload, this reliable baseload energy for a bunch of panels that are covered in snow and windmills that don't spin? What happens then? Who bails us out when there's no baseload energy anymore?
I don't know the answer to that. Probably no one. But when you reference Europe and them sharing energy within other countries, it reminds me of Pennsylvania. Because when we talk about Reggie, I think it's really cute that states like Maryland can say we don't emit emissions or don't have CO2, but they don't generate electricity either. They take ours. So Pennsylvania is the hub for all of the states around us. West Virginia is the only other state in PJM that produces enough electricity that they consume. Every other state in PJM does not produce the electricity that they consume. They take from other states. So that's why Homer City, when it shut down, how important their transmission lines are, because they go directly into New York State, and they take Pennsylvania's electricity. So when you make that analogy with Europe, it's very similar to Pennsylvania. We are not on an island. I kind of wish we were, because all the states around us would, except for West Virginia, not have the power they need to operate.
Well, we are a hub thanks to you guys and all of the hard work you and your workers do. So thank you for everything. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Grim Krupa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the testifiers for sharing their expertise, and for Ms. Gleason and Consul for setting up. This is a wonderful opportunity, a good learning experience. We all know that the coal seams in southwestern Pennsylvania are some of the richest mineral deposits in the world. That's been a blessing to our country, to our state, and to our region. I think it's critical that we not take that blessing for granted. I know that Ms. Gleason talked about deaths by 100 stabs, if I'm saying that the right way. And obviously, the crippling energy regulations policy, the governor's unlawful attempts to include us in Reggie, I'm sure that those are the deepest and severe wounds right now. But in the short time I've been in Harrisburg, one of the things that I hear about across the board in all the different industries is the permitting nightmare. So is that one of these 1,000 cuts? Is the permitting processes for what you do, is that another wound that you have to endure as well? Can you, if so, can you elaborate on that, please?
I will let Jim talk, but I will tell you I got 2 emails this morning about permits that they're waiting on.
Yeah. Permitting is something, earlier we had the question about, how we interact with the community and the environmental responsibility of companies. And the DEP exists to make sure we do a good job of it. And it now takes us somewhere between 3 and 4 years to get a deep mine permit. That's a long planning time. So whenever you mine coal, as you might imagine from your tour in here, you don't just get the coal. Sometimes you get dirt, which we call ash or bony, with the coal. And so we basically have to build full-scale landfills to put that in when we separate it out, because our customers don't want to pay us for dirt. And so those landfills, we in our mind's eye, we average that they are 7 to 8 years in order to expand and grow the landfills. So it creates very, very long lead times to try and do anything. You can't react to a rising market where capitalism is sending you a price signal to produce more coal. You can't react to it. It's difficult in getting the equipment in the workforce, let alone having the permits. And there are some good people within the DEP that try hard, and then there's the rest of the organization. And it is a difficult thing. There are things that we suggest to try and improve matters that they are in a constant state of working on. I would just say that there is always room for improvement, market improvement. There's people in there working today that are working to improvement and have just embarked on that just in the last few months. A year from now, we'll be able to tell you if we see the improvement.
I'll just add one tidbit, and that is the permit decision guarantee or the current permitting efforts by DEP. When you peel back the layers of the onion, you realize that a lot of the permits don't have a timeline. So there's no metrics that you can really report on when there's no established timeline for those metrics. I have not been able to access the days for the mining program. That has not become publicly available. If I go back to the old 2011, 2012 permit decision guarantee timelines, our underground mining permits they might have renewals don't have a timeline. I know that for certain. So we have a lot of stuff that just gets shelved and collects dust because there's no metric to report.
Representative Kephart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to thank everyone that made this possible today. This is an extraordinary effort to make this happen today, so thank you to Consol for that. And, you know, you guys started off, I'll also mention here that Whip O'Neill said that he was the only underground coal miner. I think I'm the only surface coal mining certified. I had to do the annual refresher in March to check my boxes with MSHA, so anyhow, but Rosebud has operations in Clearfield and Cambria County. Thank you guys for that, and thank you for my tour last year, and Rachel was there. That was great I think we were about 600 feet underground, and we were talking earlier how the coal seams, you know, rise in Pennsylvania as you go up there. So anyhow, so, you know, you guys mentioned a salary earlier of $111,000. I don't care where you are in this country, $111,000 a year is a good salary. I mean, that's up in the top 15% of income earning, regardless of where you are. So I think these are good paying jobs by anybody's standard. Why we want to shut them down, I'm not real sure, because additionally, you need coal for about everything. And I mean, we all got here probably in our cars today. And, you know, the steel production, you know, Rosebud does. And additionally, you know, thermal is one of the most reliable and efficient sources of energy out there. And I'm like you, Rachel, I just want a fair playing field. You know, let's all play by the same rules. I joke in Harrisburg, I'm sure you guys have to do that little thing called bonding, but yet the solar, you know, some of the solar and stuff doesn't have to. And I said to them guys, well, that's fine. Well, then we shouldn't have to either then, right? We can all just play by the same rules and we'll see which one wins. And I have a good feeling I know which one that will be. So, you know, so there's been an assault by the federal government with these clean power rules and the water affluent here recently with those as well. And then here recently, you know, Reggie, and I just want to echo what Rachel said earlier, that Reggie does not regulate any criteria air pollutant by the EPA. None. Zero. So if you're talking about pollution, it does not regulate that. It is merely an attack on coal and other forms of energy such as oil and gas. But, you know, and here in Pennsylvania, we had a policy hearing here a few weeks ago with Pacer and you know, it's just, or press, sorry, it was press. Pacer's in a different committee, I was told. So, you know, press, I don't know where they think they're going to get their energy from, and it's, you know, mandates and everything else. So, you know, what can we do here in Pennsylvania besides stopping the full-on assault? I'm assuming in West Virginia it's a little bit easier to do business, and Matt, you guys are in West Virginia. Can you tell us some of the differences, you know, that make West Virginia easier to mining that maybe we could help here? You know, Rachel said earlier about, and I know this, is, you know, the standards are higher in Pennsylvania than this federal, you know, SMACRA law in 1977, which I disagree with the Hodel decision in the 80s that it was constitutional, but nonetheless, what's the differences that we could be doing here in Pennsylvania to make it easier to mine coal?
I think in West Virginia's case, overwhelmingly their power comes from fossil fuels, and so it's pretty much ingrained. I think that is a very necessary industry. You can't do it any other way in West Virginia for now. You know, as far as coal jobs, we provide about 2,000 jobs at Consol. There's, you know, almost, I guess, a little over 10,000 jobs from coal in Pennsylvania. There's tens of thousands of coal jobs in West Virginia, or from industries directly related to it. So it's a part of life. And on top of that, their government officials and everyone that, the regulators, they're all very easily accessible. Always want to have the conversations, but I think they're very clearly united around the idea of how important fossil fuels, especially coal, is to the state. And I don't think anybody would disagree with that down there.
I would just add what Representative Krupa said is permitting. I mean, it's much easier to get one in West Virginia than it is Pennsylvania.
I would just make the comment that you have to protect the asset base that you have, and presently, as far as coal-fired power goes, you have Keystone and Conemaugh, both of which have filed paperwork to retire 12/31 of 2028, which is not far from here. So, and I know it's in large part due to EPA rules, but anything to be able to protect the base load generation in there. While we operate mines in the shadows of those two plants, we don't sell any coal to them, so there's no financial interest in our end. It's just having reliable power for us to do our business of mining metallurgical coal. The second thing, and what the representative over here brought up, is being able to take and get permits, and anything that can be done. And there's no individual single thing that is easy to enunciate at a meeting like this to be able to tell you how to speed up our ability to get permits. We are fine to comply with the environmental regulations that are here in place, but we need to get the paperwork done to allow us to, have the tools to hit the dirt and make holes in the ground to be able to mine coal. And those are what take a lot of time.
Well, I appreciate that. So it sounds like maybe we need to get on the permitting reform, and hopefully next term we can do that. Getting this done, that would be huge for you guys, and it would, I'm assuming, produce more $111,000 a year jobs when you do that, which I think this state needs, including my district. Now we're mostly surface up that way, but I know, and maybe Rachel, you can talk about this. We mentioned reclamation earlier. And there's this coal tax. In fact, they just reauthorized it at the federal level. But I would bet if, DEP does not help on these water standards for reclamation, but is it possible that maybe we could have these private operators be, they have to put up bonding, so they're not going to walk away from their, liabilities. Maybe they could go in at no cost to the taxpayer because they're going to get the remaining coal that is, they go back and strip. For instance, when we did it, we did the e-coal, the stumps up home. And, we could go back in, strip this. It would cost the taxpayer $0 instead of, the coal industry is currently taxed 28 cents a ton in Pennsylvania, I believe, on bituminous to do this. So, we could do it for basically nothing, right, if we have the operators just dig up the remaining coal potentially. What can we do on the reclamation end? I know some of these water standards is, it's not that you can't make it worse. You have to make it better if you touch it. We have, red spots from years ago. What can we do on that front?
I think you may be referencing two different buckets here, and and Jim may be able to talk about this a little bit more, but there's a bit of a challenge. So when you read the newspaper articles that Pennsylvania is getting, $28 million in AML funding or AMLR funding or whatever the federal government's handing out yesterday and tomorrow, that's a Title IV grant. So it's Title IV in that Title IV is any mining operation that was touched before 1977. To be eligible for those, you have to be a nonprofit. To access any of that money, you have to work through a nonprofit to get that money. Current operations are not nonprofit operations. Some of them do work through nonprofit operations to identify that reclamation, but as you mentioned, it's a bit of a challenge. None of that money is really accessible for current operators who have the expertise in reclaiming. Nothing against the NGO groups, but they don't actively employ folks that know how to reclaim land. And Jim, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I would just mention that it gets back to the permitting conundrum that exists. So, there are some great people that work at BAMR, the Bureau of Abandoned Mine Reclamation, that are administering the funds. Intelligent people who care about the environment, but you got to do the work in order to set up small jobs to be able to take and recover the stumps that you're talking about while you're doing reclamation. You have to have a permitting team, a land team, actively working on that. And I will tell you that we're going full out with our permitting, mine engineers, and everything else, just try and maintain what we presently have with mining 4.5 million tons in Pennsylvania. It's very difficult to pull off of that work and keep the 900 people we have working in PA working and expand by doing the permitting and paperwork necessary to go after large-scale BAMR funds. We have a project that's underway. It was awarded through the BAMR process. I believe I'm using the terminology correctly. It's awaiting funding. The BAMR people have to report everything back to the OSM, Office of Surface Mining, which is the federal side of it. It has to be gone through with a fine-tooth comb before they can enact and do anything. And it is a slow and cumbersome process, not the fault of BAMR, that one has to go through. It affects one of our deep mines that we're putting in. We're doing a large-scale water treatment plant. It'll be the second one that we've built in order to facilitate cleaning up the environment. And it just happens to be adjacent to a site where we're actively mining, and it seemed like a good project to do with the community and everything. But we have literally worked on it for a year, and still, it's not. The funds are there, but we're still grinding through the paperwork with it.
And just a real quick tidbit to add to that, when Jim says they have to work with OSM, when we see the newspaper headlines that Pennsylvania gets $30 million of AMLR money, we don't physically get it. To DEP and BAMR's credit, they don't actually get a check for $30 million. They have to approve a project, submit it to the federal government, to OSM. OSM has to check the boxes and approve it, and then Pennsylvania can pull down the money. So while the money's awarded, it's kind of like the capital budget, you don't really get it until it's pulled down.
Well, I thank you guys for that, and I just want to note, I mean, this isn't art, but nonprofits doing this. Although I will say Rosebud worked with several to clean up the Stony Creek water, so they made a whole movie out of it. I remember I was in law school and they were showing us this. So anyhow, I want to thank all you guys for employing people, and I stand with you guys wholeheartedly. And like I said, Rosebud, you employ people in my district, so thank you. So and thanks everybody for testifying here today.
Representative Mihalik.
Chairman Kale, you come up with a lot of really crazy ideas, and this one happened to be pretty awesome. I think this is an amazing opportunity for us to lay our own eyes on something that we do talk about a lot in Harrisburg, so just having that firsthand knowledge of it, I think, is incredibly important. So thank you to everybody for putting this on today and rolling out the red carpet for us. I was able to go a few years back to another longwall operation with my father-in-law, and I know how special it was for him to be able to take his family down there before he retired. He spent 35 years underground at the Cumberland coal mine in Greene County, and it did provide a good way of life for the family, but it was a hard job. So over that course of 35 years, he went through numerous union strikes, different changes in ownership, and it's just a hard job physically. It was a difficult job. And I'm getting a little taste of like just being removed. Like it's different for us on a day to day, throw a suit on, go to the office, take some meetings, something happens at home, I could go address it. My son had an incident right as we got underground today with a baseball bat, and I'm 1 hour and 1,100 feet from being able to do anything about it. So I'm getting a little taste of what the employees in the industry would just be removed from the family. So my question is about just challenges with the workforce. I mean, we've seen this since COVID, just a wide range of industries just having so much difficulty filling those positions. I know it was said earlier that Consul's got about 2,000 employees, but are you experiencing difficulties with just filling open positions and recruiting candidates to work in this industry, especially in light of all the negative publicity surrounding the coal industry?
So I'll take the first turn. Representative, thank you for your question. Thanks for coming. Just an example, I looked at one of our projects the other day, which happens to be a Consol project. They're putting in a new elevator shaft for the Bailey mine, not too far from here in a little town called Aleppo. And, we sink all their shafts. It's an honor. I just looked, we spent $287,000 on wages, just wages, not all the benefits, training employees on that one single project. That may not sound like a lot, but that's over 12 months. And we have to do that because we don't have the fifth generation that wants to come to work for us anymore. That's where we are. And when I joked upstairs that, you know, some of these people who are 12 years old just went through puberty, I mean, sometimes it feels that way. And what we need to do as employers, because we can't, it's hard for them to agree and understand that we do have a lifetime job for them here. I think that's our biggest challenge, is getting across that stop listening to this stuff from people on the coast and trust us. We've been around since 1917. I think we've seen some ups and downs. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. So our largest challenge is in convincing them that this is a lifetime job. And consequently, it sounds funny, but that relates to the training and the turnover. Because if they all think I'm only going to be here for a couple months or a couple years, because that's what they've been told, then they don't really get as invested as we used to get. And that's not a pick on them. That's not their fault. That's just how it is today. So we, in the old days, we wouldn't have to do what we do now. But now we're begging for people. And we have a hard time hanging on to them because it's hard to get across that it's a lifetime job. So that's a challenge. The other thing is there is a skills gap. Not only, so the number one, we have an interest gap. We don't have interest as much as we did. Why? Because of what I just said. They're not interested in applying. We're begging for applications. You know, that's the one piece. The second piece is when they get to us, many of them weren't like generations before them that knew how to change oil, knew how to change the tires on their car, knew how to fix a farm implement, right? I mean, that's the skill set that they came to us. They come to us now, and some of them can't read a ruler. So I don't know. Can you help us with that? Maybe we can. Maybe we can have a little help there. Honestly, we struggle with it every day. Every day we struggle with it. And all we want to do is employ more people. That's all we want to do. And all we want to do is pay them a big, I was going to say a swear word, which I can't. Pay them a boatload of money. That's all we want to do. But it's really hard when the people don't want to work in this industry and, you know, when they don't have the skills. So we're working hard. We're gonna make them be our people. And kicking and screaming, we're going to make them understand and appreciate that, man, I hope you're here for 35 years. And we're proud to do that, but it's difficult.
I can speak to our geographic region, which would be Indiana, Cambria, Clearfield area. And there isn't that many good paying jobs. We have the oil and gas industry, us, road construction. It's kind of three different types of jobs. We struggled a couple years ago, particularly whenever nationally on TV, it was the war on coal through the Obama years and everything else went on. And we struggled with attracting some talent because people were very fearful of it. In our area, you actually saw the power plants close, like Homer City closing and laying people off, and the announcement about Keystone and Conemaugh. And it created a lot of fear in families. And so young people who were thinking about a career in mining were scared to say, you know, if the power plant's closing, I guess I won't have a job. And so we had to work very hard to educate not just our workforce, but their friends, their families, the communities, that we are metallurgical coal in the region where we are at. And while these large power plants might be closing, we still have a bright future. We have a bright future in supplying the domestic steel industry as well as exporting. Again, tell the tale of exporting met coal from Clymer, Pennsylvania to Japan for the last 20 years. People don't understand that. CONSOL has a Baltimore terminal that is just a key asset to them, allowing them to do 70% exports. And I'm speaking for Matt here, but that provides a bright future should policy not get corrected in the United States. And the same thing happens with metallurgical coal. If by some terrible outcome the remaining domestic coke batteries and blast furnaces close over the next decade in the United States, well, we can go 100% export and export overseas because they're There are many, many, particularly in Southeast Asia, the economic development that is going there is just extraordinary. It's what we were in the Industrial Revolution is what's going on over there now. And when you explain that to people, it's a 20-minute conversation and a PowerPoint, as you might imagine. They get it, they understand it, and they no longer have fear, and they have talking points to go back to their family members and say, hey, cousin, why don't you come to work in the mines? This is a good job, and here's why, and they can explain it to people. So education is what we found to be the best tool to simply explain to the younger people this is a job worth having and a career you can have all your life.
Thank you.
All right. Any more questions before I close up with a couple questions, and we'll hand the floor back over to Representative Cook for some closing remarks. Hey, yep, Representative Barton.
On that same light, I'm just curious. There's been a lot of talk about legalizing marijuana. Can you share how that might affect your industry and this industry?
That's a big no underground.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we can't operate like that. It would be an issue. Yeah.
I would not be one of the people that have to tell a family member, I'm sorry, your family member got hurt because we had an impaired individual. That would be just a terrible thing to have to do. So, people's lifestyle choices and their occupations, oftentimes are at opposite ends of the spectrum. This one with mining, it just has to be a hard no. There's no place for it, and you can see it and feel it when you're down here and recognize what you're doing.
And I knew the answer. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
Representative, if you don't mind, I think what people forget is that is also a barrier to employment. That was part of our problem in getting even anybody, is that so many will not pass the, pot test, right? And whatever the drug is, whatever it is. I mean, we work with the Consol, and thank God they say no, hard no. That's great that it's a hard no, but the pool of employees then just goes from here to here to here to here. It's like this tiny little pool of employees because we can't stop smoking pot. And they have to do that if they're going to work in our company, and that's just all there is to it. And if you don't, you're out. 100% out. Done. In West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, it's still probably the law there, they'll pull your certification. If you fail a drug test in West Virginia, you're done. You're done in the industry. Now, I think they can return those to them at some point. But, yeah, it's literally a hard no, and that means that our employment pool is teeny tiny.
All right. Mr. Barker, I like maps. I'm a simple kind of guy, and I'm looking at your map here, and I can't help but think to myself, where it shows where the coal is within the northeast portion of the United States, there's also a lot of natural gas in that area, and there's probably some correlation as to why. I don't want to get into that right now, but it's just another classic example. Pennsylvania is so blessed with natural resources and abundance, so much more than somewhere like Ohio, right? Ohio has some on the eastern portion, but it's going right through the heart of our Commonwealth. And I have to ask you, are we running out of coal?
I can speak for up in our area, and we have at least 50 years of reserves. Whether or not we will be allowed to continue to mine them for 50 years, hopefully so. You all are there to hopefully protect that. But we have a minimum and more. We have 2 core drills, which are what you use to explore for coal, and where you're going to put your, apply for your next permits and put your next mines in. We have 2 of them running every single day. Our owner is a very long-term thinker, and he has for years had 2 exploratory drills running and constantly to try and keep that conveyor belt of new mines, new mine permits, new reserves coming at us. We believe it's integral and important to society, as I talked about earlier, and so we're planning for it, and we hope we can. But the coal is there to be able to mine. Gets deeper, gets tougher to mine, thinner seams on our end, but it's there and can be done.
And just the follow-up, I'll let you answer it as well, but just real quick, because your process and the coal you're using, it sounds like you also need iron ore. Is that still available?
I would hate to testify to that, but my understanding is there is decades and decades of iron ore out in the iron ore range in Minnesota. But somebody from Cleveland Cliffs or U.S. Steel would best answer that.
Matt, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, the United States itself has the most coal reserves of any country in the world. You know, from Consol standpoint, down in this area, at the end of last year, we controlled about 580 some million tons of reserves still that are around this area. Again, we mine about 26 million a year, so you can kind of do the math there and see how many years, how many decades we got. And that's just in this immediate area. There's also, you know, there could be hundreds of other millions of tons outside of that aren't owned by us yet, that aren't, you know, really owned or able to be mined by anybody yet. Maybe they never will be, but there's definitely more than enough. Absolutely.
Just quickly, sir, if I
yes,
may,
sir.
just to add in that there's also other seams. So that's Pittsburgh. That's up here. There's Freeport, if I remember my geology from mining engineering school well, is down here. And that's a pretty nice seam too, I think, Jim. I think you have a few mines in that, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So there's a whole nother layer. There's a Swickley seam. There's other seams that, you know, we could save the world if you'd let us. They're all there.
And I don't need to ask this question. I think it goes without saying. There's still a market for steel and other manufactured goods that you do with coke. And by the way, number one or two cost in manufacturing, beyond the use of coke in manufacturing, the number one or two cost is energy costs. So you need affordable and reliable sources of energy. You know, the governor talks a lot about how we're losing to Ohio. And we look at maps like this, it's like, we're not losing to Ohio. We got more resources than anybody. We have more access to market than they do. We're closer to larger markets. We have navigable waterways. We have railways. How are we losing to Ohio? It's because Harrisburg keeps getting in the way. That's why we're losing to Ohio. We shouldn't be talking about competing in Pennsylvania. We should be talking about dominating. With the natural resources that we have, the access to market that we have, this is another example. And I look at the left's energy policies that we've been seeing here the last decade or two. I can't figure out who the winner is, at least in Pennsylvania. This is not better for our environment. We talked about that today. It's clearly not better for our jobs. It's a huge national security issue. Jim, thank you for pointing all of that out. That's a great point to talk about. And it's not good for our allies either. Who is the winner? As a Pennsylvania representative, what interest are you representing? What good are you doing for your constituents by plugging that type of energy policy? I don't think there is a winner, and I think the fantasy hour needs to end as it relates to energy policy, and it ended in certain places. You know, someone mentioned earlier about this transition that's allegedly out there. Ask Germany how that transition's going. Ask them how it worked out when they got their natural gas supply cut off, where they went to, where they turned to. And it's just, we're heading down a path right now that's going to lead to destruction, and we're doing it intentionally. It's really just a remarkable, we're with our eyes wide open, walking off a cliff with our energy policy. And I just don't, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And Mr. Barker, I did want to ask you an actual question, so I'm going to get to that right now. You'd mentioned a little bit earlier about Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel and how they use that type of coal, and I don't want to be presumptuous. I'm not sure if they use your coal or not, but do you have any comment on Nippon Steel purchasing U.S. Steel? And I know it's caused a little bit of
we are
uproar,
we are very supportive of it in that we have had a commercial relationship with Nippon since 2004. Again, 20 years we've shipped coal to them, about 1 million tons a year, and they have been great people to deal with. They run probably about, they're probably 4 times, I think, the size of U.S. Steel. They run blast furnaces the same. They have some EAFs. We have attended some meetings that U.S. Steel and Nippon have jointly put on where they explain their plans for everything. We have told our workforce that, there's a lot of scary things that people have said and everything, and we just don't see them. We don't, we're supportive of it and have no issue with it. It is important to maintain these assets. That's the number one thing that I want to express is maintain the assets in Pittsburgh and Gary, Indiana that you still have relative to coke ovens and blast furnaces. And you got to be able to convert that iron ore, and we think that Nippon would be good stewards of that.
Well, I just want to thank you all for testifying. I'm going to hand it over to Representative Cook, then give another brief closing, just explaining where we're at tomorrow. But it's just another example how the world's a better place with Pennsylvania energy. We appreciate you all being here and testifying to that effect. Representative Cook?
Not so fast. What a great program. And working with a lot of young people, all they know is they throw the switch and the lights magically come on. We want to drive electric vehicles. We want to do all these neat things, but they don't see the entire movie. They just see the snapshot or the one frame of the movie. So hats off, applauding to you, what you're doing, what you're trying to do. I believe education is key here going forward, so people really understand what it takes to get from A to B to C and then going forward. And to clean our future up, we're going to have to clean up along the way. We get that. We all want clean water, clean air, all that stuff, but it's going to take some time. So again, thank you for all you're doing. Thank the Alliance, Console, all of you. We all have a voice in this, and I think you have a pretty good support group around you today on this end. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys again for this venue, putting this together. This was amazing. This was really something that has been exciting for us, and I truly do appreciate it. I'd also like to give a shout out to the film crew that came down here and set all this stuff up. I mean, this isn't these guys, they travel with us all over the state and are tormented by all the hearings that we have, and this is one of the more complicated ones, I would imagine, but you guys always do an awesome job, and it's very much appreciated. So thank you very much. So the Policy Committee will be meeting tomorrow, July 25th in Venango County for a hearing on brine spreading in Pennsylvania hosted by Chairman Lee James. Until then, this committee is adjourned.